Fix old cameras. Your successful completion of the demonstrated repair ultimately depends on the quality of your tools, the condition of your camera, and most importantly, your repair ability.
This little gem looks good, seems to work okay, however there is no meter function. A very common cause of meter failure in a camera such as this is a corroded battery contact and battery wire. As a bonus, the viewfinder window foam is all degraded also. To get to the battery wire and battery contact, a few things are going to have to come off. Start with the advanced lever and move to the timer lever. With the timer lever and advanced lever off, lock the rewind shaft and spin the rewind knob counterclockwise. With all the leatherette removed, that door latch can be removed. Watch for the spring. Then we can also remove the top front shell and lift it aside. And then with the top front shell removed, clean the glass at this point in time if there's any smudges, or you can do it before you reassemble. But with that removed, the top cover can be removed. You need to lift it past the PC socket. The bottom shell can be removed in the same manner. Of course, the screws were obviously removed first. More screws to be removed, and then the bottom cover can be lifted free. The battery lid should also be removed prior to removing the bottom cover. And just like that, lo and behold, there's the battery chamber. 3 more screws, and the battery chamber lifts free to expose the corroded contact and corroded wire. Put the battery chamber in a plastic dish or glass dish and neutralize the corrosion with a little vinegar. While that soaks, we can gain access to the battery wire by removing the viewfinder prism. 3 screws hold the viewfinder prism in place. Under the viewfinder prism, there is a wire retainer that will also need to be removed, and then the yellow wire can be pulled free. The yellow wire is the battery wire, and it will need to be removed from the meter. It just fell apart. The solder joint integrity destroyed by corrosion. File or polish the contact to where it's shiny clean. Standard electronic solder will not adhere to the metal of the contact. A high heat solder will have to be used. In lieu of that type of solder, if you're careful, the contact can be bent and the wire can be crimped in the contact. Contact metal is brittle. You only get one shot at it. Bending it back and forth will break it. Another option is conductive wire glue. If you try to use high heat solder, the contact will need to be removed from the plastic housing or you'll melt the housing. So moving on with the battery wire crimped firmly to the battery contact can be reinstalled. Take care that there is adequate clearance between the battery contact and the chassis of the camera. Place shrink tubing insulator on the routed battery wire and reattach the battery wire to the meter via solder. Ensure that there is a solid solder connection and slip the insulating shrink tubing in place. With that in place, the wire retainer can also be installed. With the wires routed as they should be, the viewfinder prism can be reinstalled. Install the proper screws in the proper holes for the viewfinder. Now a meter test is in order. Place a WinCell 625 battery into the battery chamber, install the lid, and check the meter for reaction to light changes. It works excellent. With the meter functionality confirmed and all the viewfinder glass cleaned, the counter dial cleaned also, and maybe anything else that could be cleaned, the bottom cover can be installed. The lower front plate goes over the bottom cover. More screws. Now balance the release button on top of the release post. The top cover can be installed slipping over the PC socket. Now the counter engagement pawl will need to be manipulated so the top cover can be slipped in place. Carefully nudge it underneath the edge of the cover and the top cover will then pop into place. With the top cover in place, the front shell plate can be installed over the top of the top cover. More screws. Ply-bond adhesive can be used to glue down the leatherettes. Perhaps the hardest thing upon reassembly is installing the door latch spring underneath the door latch and holding it all in place where you get the door latch plate covering the door latch and the screws installed into the door latch plate. So you got the spring, the door latch plate, all layered into position with tension on the spring, and then you slide the door latch plate while keeping pressure down onto the latch, and once in place, it'll all hold until the screws are installed, as long as you keep pressure downward with your thumb against the plate. Hopefully, the video demonstration of the installation clears up the film door latch mumbo jumbo narration. Ha ha. Anyway, a little more ply-bond adhesive and another strip of leatherette. Maybe now is a good time to clean all the old foam around from the viewfinder window and install some replacement foam strips. These are self-adhesive, cut to fit. The horizontal strips can be a little finicky, and you want to cut them just a shade long so they tuck in nicely and leave no gaps between the joints of the 4 strips. Moving on with the reassembly. Install the rewind shaft and hold the rewind shaft while you spin the rewind knob into place. With the rewind knob in place, tighten it up just snug. Don't over tighten the knob and snap the fork on the rewind shaft. Now moving on to the advance lever. It seats in place one way. Can't put it on wrong. Spring plate. Decorative retaining screw. And another plate. Another plate, and then the decorative retaining screw, as shown in the order on the video, not the stumbling, mumbling narration. Finger tight. A spanner wrench can be used to gently snug the final bit. Same applies to the timer lever. Be careful not to cross thread the timer lever retainer, as it's a little finicky. Even pressure on the sides of the retaining plate will get it started, and then tightening up with the points of a tweezers or a spanner. Test the timer, and your time is up.
Thank you for watching. Inspired? Check back for new video postings.